It is a Wednesday afternoon. It's Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody. I got a couple of ghouls in the studio with me this afternoon.
You know, you can only break that joke out once a year.
Once a year, that's it. Yep. But we got Tim. Tim lives for this. Tim Weisberg is a huge Halloween fan. He's over there producing. Because if you want to see this program, you can actually go on YouTube.com and you can see it. WBSM channel on YouTube, and it's live. So,
yeah, you can do that and see me and see how lame I am because I'm not in a costume.
I'm not. The boss put out a memo like yesterday. Everybody dress up in a costume, and I'm not even sure. Tim, did he show up? Did the boss show up in a costume?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen him.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen him either. So, but I haven't seen anybody in a costume. So,
no, I didn't see it. Well, no, did we? No, I didn't see anybody in a costume in the studio as I walked in.
One of the interns dressed up.
Oh, so you guys are as bad as I.
Yeah. So, I mean, not a whole lot of Halloween spirit around here. Not a big fan, anyway. I've never really been a big Halloween fan.
I like Halloween.
You do?
I do.
What do you like about it?
As an adult, I like giving candy out to the kids. I like, my kids get dressed up.
Well, it's income redistribution, so you guys on the left would like that, right?
Well, it's like that, yeah. I had a thing going, in election years. We supersized the candy and put a little campaign sticker on it. Everybody,
hey, hand out bumper
the
stickers,
kids.
right?
I'm not above that. The kids walk away and say, "Oh, Mayor Mitchell gives out the biggest candy." Oh yeah, go tell your parents who are eligible to vote, kids.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm not above that kind of ploy, Barry.
So Trick or Treat is going to be out in a few hours anyway, and it's
they start early. They start when it's still daylight, and they end early.
Yeah, do you get a lot by 7 o'clock?
Oh yeah, we get tons. Yeah. My neighborhood's like Grand Central for whatever reason. Yeah,
we used to, and then the neighborhood kind of grew older, and people died, and stuff like that.
It happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So there just really isn't a whole lot of activity in our neighborhood anymore.
Yeah, we get a lot of kids. There's some who drive to my neighborhood. I don't know if it's because they heard about the extra large candy that I give out. I'm not sure why it is, but they do, and there are lots of kids. It's fun. It's fun. My kids, my kids are out there. We have some neighbors will put out like a what do you call it, like a fire pit kind of thing. Hang out front, hand out candy, on the front lawn, all that. So it's a lot of fun. I happen to like it.
Yeah, my neighbor across the street used to do a coffin. He'd put a coffin in his driveway, and all kinds of sound effects and stuff. And the kids would come up the driveway, and he'd hop out of the coffin and yell at him and stuff. But
I don't let the kids just walk up and silently accept candy from me. I put them on the spot. I want them to tell me what. So who are you? If it's not evident to me,
who are you voting for?
Who are you voting for? Yeah,
you want the Snickers bar? Come on, fess up. Who are you voting for?
Yeah, how about this quid pro quo, right? No, I say I usually say them to who are you? I mean, if they're dressed in some costume I don't recognize, and so. I make them earn it, Barry. I make them earn the candy a little bit. They have to say trick or treat. They can't just say, "Hey, gimme."
I know today it's so different. I mean, kids, you open the door and they just kind of stand there and don't say anything. Then you get, okay, here, whatever, just get out of here.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Halloween fan.
Evidently, you're not. Yeah.
When the kids were small,
you don't have a costume on. You don't.
I don't have a costume on. No. My lights will be out by probably 5 o'clock.
Oh, you're one of those. They'll never go on.
Go away. Bah humbug.
Nobody's home, and in parentheses, don't egg me, right?
Yeah, right. So, but in any event, there are going to be a lot of kids on the streets later. So
so people just, in all seriousness, just remember that we have to be conscious of that, and as early as 4 or 5 o'clock, there are lots of kids around. So if everybody slows down while they're driving, that would be great.
And isn't there a city ordinance that you got to wait till it gets dark? Isn't there? No,
not that I'm aware of.
No, I mean, no kids should be out at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I mean, come on.
Why not, right? And
then they come back around again later. Didn't I see you before?
Hey, look, that's okay if they want to come back around for seconds. It's fine by me. After everybody's been served once.
So what kind of stuff do you? I mean, you haven't bought your candy yet. I know you haven't.
Do I have? No. Annie buys the candy.
Okay.
I don't know where.
Has she gotten it yet?
Yeah, I'm sure. You know, she went to CVS, and I think I saw some bags somewhere.
Yeah.
Of course, you know, it all goes on sale the day after, November 1st.
Right.
You know, they're practically giving away candy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you go out and you buy all of this candy, and then you get all of this candy left over if your kids go out and trick or treat. So tomorrow morning you're going to have this. Well, your kids are too old now, right? Are they still?
No, they still. Well, my 2 high schoolers, they'll go out for a little bit, and then my 7th grader, she still goes. She still gets into it.
Still into it, yeah.
Yeah.
So you'll have.
And then one of our neighbors has a great party afterward, and we'll all go over there. You know, there are lots of kids there, and that's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Bobbing for apples and all that kind of stuff.
All that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, we used to do that when we were younger.
Yeah, all that stuff. So good neighborhood party to follow. Actually, in between, so my routine is this: I give out the candy, I go to the South End parade, costume parade. Loretta Brooks, longtime parade. Loretta, as most people know, I think passed away a few months ago, but thankfully, a number of folks on the peninsula have continued the tradition, which is a great one. It's almost 50 years running, where the kids, you know, march down from Hazelwood down to Clegg Field, and they parade around, and so they've kept it going, which is great. So I just, you know, I show up for that because I think it's so cool, and then I go back and I go to my neighborhood party. That's my Halloween routine.
So that starts at 7.
And in some years I buy a costume. You know, time has not run out yet on me, just as I wait until the 11th hour to buy Christmas presents. So my approach to Halloween is very similar. So you might just find me in one of the costume stores.
So what might you be?
I don't know. You know, when you go into those stores, most of the outfits are, you know, most of them are short skirts. Let's just put it that way. Something.
So you're going to wear a short skirt?
Not quite that adventurous.
So the mayor's going to be seen in a short skirt wandering around at Clegg Field tonight.
No, I'm not going there. No. I've been Cookie Monster in years past. I was a Bumblebee a couple of years ago. There's a picture of me and Loretta Burke with me in my Bumblebee outfit. That one wasn't too comfortable. It's kind of itchy. I'm probably not going back to that one, Barry. I'm not sure what it was made of and whether it was flame retardant. Who knows? But probably not doing that one again.
See, I never really got the feel of Halloween because I just never really got it. It just never registered with me. I mean, so you're
thinking too hard about it.
Well, you know, your parents go out and they blow, you know, $50 on candy.
Yeah.
And then you go out and beg for candy.
$50. Nobody's spending $50.
Well, I mean,
on candy.
you know, if you
except for me, if I'm using it as a campaign ploy, right? But most people don't.
Well, you know, some of the busy neighborhoods in town, yeah, you do. I mean, you live in a cul-de-sac. You live in one of these, you know, like Pine Hill or whatever. You know,
that's a good neighborhood for Halloween.
Yeah, people drop off their kids in caravans full, and you know, and then they go house to house. And
but candy's so cheap these days too. You know, you can just, you know, it's all made in China.
But what's the point? So my parents put me in a costume, send me out in the neighborhood to wander the streets begging for candy in the dark, right? When all they had to do was just buy me the candy.
You're being a real curmudgeon now, Barry.
Just cut out the middleman. Buy me the candy. I get to stay home.
Or wait till November 1st when it's, you know, discounted 75%, right?
Just never got it. Never got it. Anyway,
all right. So, you know, here's a public service announcement. Don't go to Barry Richards' house for Halloween. You're going to get stiff. You're going to get coal.
So anyway, wow, Whitey Bulger found dead yesterday, huh?
Yeah.
It's quite a thing.
You got lots of press calls yesterday about that.
I bet you did.
Yeah. You know, and what I said was, and I do mean this. You know, it's. You know, they're still investigating what happened. The Bureau of Prisons is, but you know, I just hope people think of his victims first, right? I mean, this is somebody who just left devastation in his wake. He was one nasty guy, and you know, he wrecked a lot of lives and corrupted many public officials, you know, police and FBI agents and others. And, you know, caused a lot of harm. And took us a while to find him, for sure, over many years. And
for those who don't know and wondering why we're even talking about this, you as assistant U.S. attorney, that was, I mean, you were on the case. You were looking for this guy.
Yeah, so I was the prosecutor assigned to the task force that was looking for him. There was the fugitive task force. So, I had other cases, but that looking for him was one of my responsibilities, and I had it for 7 years. And we looked high and low and everywhere for him, and including in other countries. And it's some loud music out there, Barry. Can you hear that?
Not with my headphones on. No,
okay.
I don't. Yeah.
All right. But we looked all over the place for him. So in retrospect, we really didn't have any hot leads. I mean, we knew, he had fled in January of 1995, and by 96, the trail was cold. And we were just spent a lot of time just trying to piece it back together using all sorts of means. We certainly interviewed an awful lot of people. I mean, we interviewed just about everybody in South Boston, including his family members, and interviewed people all over the country that he had some contact with in places as remote as Grand Isle, Louisiana, and Chicago, and New York, and California. But also, we did an awful lot of work overseas in places where he had been and set up either bank accounts or safe deposit boxes. So that included, Montreal and Dublin and London, and there was one on the European continent. I'm trying to remember where that was. But
you literally had to go to all of these places and trace the leads?
Yeah, or send agents. I mean, we sent FBI agents everywhere. We had because we'd get calls all the time from the most remote places, and ordinarily most of those would get sifted out as being not credible or just not enough information to act on. But sometimes you had to act on them, so we acted on leads in places as remote as the Brazilian Amazon. There was somebody who we got a call from the American Embassy in Brasilia saying that somebody had reported seeing Bulger in some town near the Amazon, like literally in the jungle, right? And that we had to run that down. We had sent an agent to the coast of Cambodia. Yeah, there was one story where we got a call from the American Embassy in Phnom Penh that Bulger was sighted in an Irish pub on the Cambodian coast.
Wow, there's a vision.
Right, an Irish pub. Now, so just think about that. So Westerners, Irish pubs are kind of like Chinese restaurants.
Yeah,
they're everywhere.
They're everywhere,
right? Yeah. And there are Western expatriates in all corners of the globe, seemingly. And we sent an agent to Phnom Penh to go down to the coast, and he sat at the bar, and about an hour later, a guy who looked a lot like Bulger walked in and pulled up to the bar. Clearly wasn't him, and the agent sort of shimmied down the bar and said, "Guess why I'm here?" "Oh, yeah, obviously not. Would you mind if I take your fingerprints?" "Oh, no." They had a laugh, and that was it. But there was some, there were times like that where you still had to run things down. In retrospect, we did get at one point a tip. I'm going to say 2009-ish, that someone who looked a lot like him was on the Santa Monica Pier, right? Right near where he was ultimately found, but there was just no other detail. That was it. That was the long and short of it. So we couldn't do anything about it. And as time went on, we started to focus more on Kathy Gregg, his girlfriend, and rather than having focusing so much on him, right? If we assumed that she was still alive, and that was, an assumption that she might be easier to find than him, and so his efforts were directed toward her. So we started, we were able to find more pictures of her and from a number of sources, and we knew that she had been a dental hygienist, so we put pictures out in magazines that dentist offices subscribe to, like professional journals. We knew that she had plastic surgery in her 20s, and so it's if someone's getting plastic surgery in their 20s, they're probably likely to get more as time goes on, right? And so, we were doing the same with, cosmetic surgeon, professional journals as well, and stuff like that. And then ultimately the public service announcement that was geared toward women, and her, ultimately, landed the tip. So, and it's, I mean, there's no denying it. The story about Bulger and his life, is, that is the stuff of books and movies.
Well, I was just going to ask, you get a book in you on this or what?
I've been in a couple of the books, but
no. Have you got a book in?
Oh, I don't.
No book coming.
No.
Come on, tell all on Whitey.
No. There's a lot of stuff I can't talk about. So what I'm talking about now largely has been made public here or there. There's a lot of stuff, particularly including, a number of things that we did in the grand jury and some other, investigative measures that I'm not at liberty to talk about. But I'm not trying to be cute about it. I'm not legally permitted to do that. But it is, there's no doubt it's a fascinating story.
Now, he was caught in Santa Monica, right? In a rather modest apartment building. Somebody spotted him with a camera on their phone or something and took a picture of him?
It was a woman who, saw one of the advertisements and who called in and said, I saw somebody look just like them in Santa Monica, right near the Santa Monica, the 3rd Street Promenade at Santa Monica. The Santa Monica has this nice, sort of outdoor mall right near the water. That's, a big shopping area. And so Jimmy Bulger, Whitey Bulger, we used to call him Jimmy Bulger because all the witnesses called him Jimmy Bulger. Whitey Bulger and Kathy Gregg lived about 3 blocks away from the 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica. Now, in retrospect, it made a lot of sense, right? Because we knew, among other things, that he really wanted to live in a place that was warm. He wanted to live in a place near the water. He wanted to, he was on heart medication, a Tenethol, which is, I think it's a hypertension medication. And he couldn't readily go to a drugstore, couldn't readily go to a CVS to get that. But he could drive down to Tijuana and in Mexico and buy a lot of that because, so much of what's, prescribed in the United States can be bought over the counter in Mexico. So, and by the way, what was unique about Santa Monica remains one of the few communities in the United States that still has rent control. So if you can get a rent control apartment, you can live on limited means for a long time. In other words, he couldn't go out and get a job. He had stashed away a lot of money. And he knew that a number of his bank accounts were burnt, right? So we knew he suspected that we knew about his bank account, for instance, in London at Barclays, right? So, which he didn't touch for years. We were intercepting the bank statements for a long time, and he wasn't touching that. So he was, certainly savvy enough to know that was, he couldn't access that money, and it was true of some of the other bank accounts. So what he did was. So he had all this cash and was able to get a rent control apartment, and so he had a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment that he paid just a few $100 for a month, in a otherwise very affluent place. So in retrospect, it all made a lot of sense.
So, there's still stories that he's got safe deposit boxes with money stashed all over the place and nobody knows where it is. Is there anything?
There may be. Some of them were found. There was one in Montreal. There was one in London. There was one in Dublin. There was one in Fort Lauderdale. These are the ones that are just coming to mind. There may have been others, and there may well have been others that we never found.
Mm. So she's still in prison, right? She'll be in prison for another couple of years?
Yeah, so she was convicted of harboring a fugitive.
Yeah. Did you see the movie Black Mass? Did you go
see
it
did.
when it came out? Was it close to reality? Sometimes Hollywood takes some...
Yeah, I think so. Johnny Depp plays Bulger, and, he's an extraordinarily talented actor. And I think it's pretty convincing. Yeah, I think it's pretty accurate.
Anything about that story or about the case in general that might surprise people that they didn't know about? Anything that's...
Well, lots been said on it over the years. So when we were working on the case, the task force, we had there are lots of folks out in the public who insisted that the government didn't want to find him, right? And some of it's understandable. He corrupted a number of FBI agents. There was one assistant U.S. attorney in Boston back in the 70s that who's since passed away, who some have suspected was corrupted in the case. So, I get that suspicion, but the reality was that we're working away at it, and if anything, the task force was spending an awful lot of government money. Right, we're flying agents around the world. That's not cheap, and so the bureau in particular, which was funded most of the task force, was not pinching pennies on this thing. In fact, they were spending more on that than anything else they were doing domestically, except for the counterterrorism work that they were doing post 9/11. They were spending more money on that task force than any other units in the FBI Boston field office.
All right, so
by far.
So there was, they were legitimately trying to find him.
Oh yeah.
So he had a very prominent brother too, who's still alive, right? Billy Bulger's still alive.
Yeah.
He was the president of the Massachusetts Senate for some time, and
right.
I believe the UMass system after that, wasn't he? President of the UMass system.
Yep.
So I would imagine you guys were watching him too to see if he was making contact at all.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that there was I don't think this is any surprise, but there was a fair amount of surveillance being done in South Boston. Yeah.
Yeah. Any reason to suspect that there might have been that he might have been assisting his brother?
Let's see how I should answer this question. I personally don't think he was assisting his brother. I'll just leave it at that. There was some contact early on, but beyond that, and I think he acknowledged that publicly, that there was some contact early on, but other than the real bad guys in South Boston, there wasn't anybody helping him out, and Whitey was savvy enough not to put his family in that kind of position. He did have another brother, Jack Bulger, who was convicted of perjury in relation to a phone call that he received from Whitey back in '95, and he had lied about it before the grand jury that was investigating at that point. But,
so when she gets out of jail, does she have any more charges to face back here in Massachusetts, or is she pretty much all done at that point?
Well, so there were no pending charges.
Nothing pending. No. All right, interesting story.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting story. It's just a lot of people have brought it up in the last day, and the death, surprised me, and it didn't. It's just you hear the news, you're like, oh wow, that's not expected. But on the other hand, it's here's a guy who informed. Was a government informant for a long time, but informed on a lot of really dangerous people too, right? La Cosa Nostra members, Italian organized crime members in particular, and so it's not. Some of what's coming out now, I guess, is that there was some sort of Italian organized crime connection to his prison murder.
Apparently, from what I read online this morning, I guess they're looking at some hitman that might have bumped him off from prison. That doesn't surprise you at all, then?
It doesn't surprise me. Look, it's sort of understood that folks who do cooperate with the government are at a higher security risk when they're incarcerated than others who haven't.
Was he in any way tied in with the Patriarca family in New England?
Not
Were they competitors?
No, not really. No. So not really. I'm not a complete expert on the history of organized crime in New England, but there wasn't much of that. The other thing that people ask about around Greater New Bedford is any connections to Greater New Bedford, and the answer is no, not that I've ever come across. It really aren't, and it's funny. It's just like around here. This area, fortunately, has never been a hotbed for organized crime. There's always been some, not always. Years ago, there were some connections on the waterfront especially with Fulton Fish Market in New York. But, and there have been sort of smaller rings, and there was a case about 15 years ago in the U.S. Attorney's Office involving some folks on the waterfront and some charges of extortion. But, it really has, fortunately, not been a hotbed for organized crime.
All right.
Unlike a lot of other New England cities.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Particularly Boston, obviously. Anything new on ABC? How you guys making out?
Nothing new. There's a hearing on the city's motion to dismiss scheduled for December 9-ish, the first couple of weeks in December. And so the judge will hear argument on our motion. And in our motion, we say that the event of that the Chinese national policy to restrict imports is not, as ABC alleges, an act of God that would relieve them of their obligations under the contract to pick up trash and or recycling.
Any new complaints about trash not being picked up or being left behind?
No. That totally died down after the second week after it started. I mean, in the first few days, there were lots of complaints, and ABC rejected many barrels, but that this seemed to come to a stop. It's not to say that people shouldn't be mindful of what they're putting in their recycling. It's just to say that they've rejected some. They've rejected a few a day, but it's far less than the 900 that they rejected on the first day.
All right, you know what? Let me take a break so we can kind of reset things here. We've got a few people that have been waiting on the line to chat with you. So how about if we take a quick break? We'll come back and take some calls right after
Sounds
this.
Good.
1420 WBSM and the phone number 508-996-0500. Stay with us. All right, 12:37 is our time. It's a Wednesday afternoon, midweek with the mayor. The mayor's in the studio, and we are broadcasting. We're going to take your calls, 508-996-0500. Got some folks that have been hanging for a while, so let's get started. You're first at WBSM. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Barry.
Hey, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Mitchell.
Hi, Celine. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I had two guests from City Hall at my neighborhood meeting last month. Very informative. Peter Berthium, and thank you to Carlos Amato.
Oh, good.
Very, very informative. Now, the real reason I call Mayor Mitchell is the Phillips Avenue School.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on it?
So my take on it is I want it to work for the neighborhood, and I have some ideas about how it should. Now, just so for everybody's benefit, the Phillips Avenue School, as the name implies, is on Phillips Avenue and Ashley Boulevard, and it has been a closed elementary school for 10 years, roughly, and the city's got to do something with it, right? And it's been used over the last 10 years in part as a training center for the fire department. But we can't just let it sit there. Something has to happen. So we've put it out to bid a couple of times. There were the first time out, I think there were 1 or 2 bidders, and there were folks in the neighborhood. The folks in the neighborhood objected to at least one of the future uses, which would have been as a dollar store. And I get that objection. And then the other bidder, I believe, dropped out, but I'm not positive about that. So the city went back and put it out to bid again. This was last year, maybe 6 months or so ago. And there were initially two bids came back, and then only one. And the one that remains is a proposal to create some housing there, and by an outfit called Cruise Development, which is a pretty well-established residential developer and manager, apartment manager. And they have properties on Cushnet Ave, south of the downtown, like Verdian Gardens, if people are familiar with that development. So I offer all that background. My take on it is this. I want to do something that works well with the neighborhood, but there are really only 2 options. Either you do this deal, or in all likelihood, we're going to have to demolish that building. And that will do 2 things. It'll be the loss of an historic property, a school that had been there for 100 years.
Right.
And by the way, it'll probably cost the city about $1 million to demolish.
Right.
And third, it'll leave a gap in the street right there, which won't look great.
Right.
But just to complete the thought, I know some people are concerned about low-income housing. They're proposing, I forget how many, 18 something in the teens number of apartments. I forget the exact number, but half of them would be designated low income. And I totally get, and we've had these discussions before, Celine, about my reluctance to bring on more subsidized housing.
Right.
We do. There are what I would suggest to folks is that there are different kinds of subsidized housing. I've been concerned about the use of Section 8 vouchers because they're not that closely regulated, at least compared to other forms of housing subsidy. And the reality is that in our real estate market, it is very hard to redevelop a property without some level of subsidy, and those are the only ones that would work. My question always is, well, who's going to manage it afterward? Is it a responsible manager, or is it an irresponsible manager? We have lots of irresponsible property owners around the city, as you and I both know, Celine, and we've cracked down on them. In this particular, and those folks, and I won't name names, but I think a lot of people are familiar with those names. If any of those folks propose to redevelop the site, I'd say no, not interested. In this particular case, John Cruz and his family, I think, are very responsible, and so I have some confidence.
Very responsible. I have nothing against the Cruz development, believe me.
So I give you a very long, you asked me a brief question, Celine, I give you a very long
answer.
Is
there a timeline pending on this?
So I can hang up. I was there, and I'm totally against the project. I had suggested that either a community center for youth or raise it. And those people that live in those neighborhoods with 3 and 4 families, 6 tenements in some houses, they need the parking. The parking is outrageous up there in those neighborhoods. So there were a lot of people there. I myself spoke against it, unless it was, these people need parking up there. It's really, people living on the avenue had to, they can't even park in front of their homes. They have to park elsewhere and walk to their home.
Yeah, it's a legitimate concern. All I would say is this. I mean, a community center would be great, but who's going to pay for it, right? Like if the city doesn't have the money to build a brand new community center. So, and I think I'd like to someday do that in the North End. We do most of our community centers, our rec centers, are all in the southern half of the city. There would be useful to have something like the Andre McCoy Center somewhere in the North End, but we're really not near that, and constructing something like that would require funds that the city doesn't really have right now.
Well, Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, no problem. No, I appreciate you bringing it up. It's legitimate. You and I might not agree on the course, but that's look,
right, exactly.
But you and I agree on like 99% of everything else, Celine.
Well, that's good to know. Have a good afternoon.
Thanks for the call, my friend. 508-996-0500. So is there a timeline for when a decision has been made by this? And who makes the decision? The citizen?
The City Council Property Committee, and then the full City Council. Yeah.
Okay. Is there a timeline by which they have to act on this?
No, not formally, no. But, if you're in the position of the developer, you're only going to wait so long. Eventually, you're going to say, you know what, they're not doing anything about it. I'm going to move on to my next project.
Yeah. Isn't it a case where generally when a bid like that is sought and the bids come in, they're only valid for so long before they expire and the process either starts over?
In some instances, I think so. It depends on what the RFP, the request for proposal, says, and I don't know if there's a deadline on this one, but I think they have to act on it at some point because the developer is just going to go understandably away. We'll just say, look, I've had enough.
508-996-0500. You're up next with the mayor. Thanks for hanging on.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Hey.
Good morning.
Hey, John.
2
days out of the year, you get to take off your costume, so this is who we really see without a costume. Unbelievable. Federal prosecutor, politician. All right. Hey, keeping in the neighborhood. Behind Tabor Mill, the big field there, the old box company and factory. I know there was committees going on and meetings, but I haven't heard anything in a couple of years. Is anything looking good over there or what?
Yeah, so this is, people would remember as the Elko dress site and the paint cutlery site. Right there at the end of Church Street, the southern end of Church Street. Yep. So it's city-owned, and, there's been some interests by some commercial developers of late to do something over there.
What type of thing?
But that's another property. I know that Sid Wainer and Son owns much of the property across the street where was it Alden Corrugated used to be, right? If you remember that, by the tracks. And by the railroad tracks, and so they may be interested. I mean, obviously they can speak for themselves. Henry Wainer can, but because they've expanded their business really nicely over on Nauset Street on the other side of the tracks, they may need some more room. But again, that's no guarantees there. So we'll see. We've put it out. That's another property that we've put out to bid a couple of times, and both times, and this is in the last, I guess, 5 years, maybe longer. Maybe it was one of the occasions was before I took office, and one when I was in office. I may be slightly off about that, but in any event, there were no takers. The land is cleaned up now, and so there may be more interest. But you'd like to see some combination of I'd like to see some kind of commercial development there because it would put the property back on the tax rolls. And there are, there's everybody wants more parkland, but of course parks,
they don't pay taxes.
Parks don't pay taxes, but we want more parks. We've built 5 parks since I became mayor, small parks, and the reality is that there are parks within a reasonable walk of there.
All right, 508-996-0500. You're up next on WBSM. Go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon already.
It is. Indeed.
Two things. No more subsidized housing, because even the towers that were made for the elderly down on Root Street and near Cornell de Villiers, the old people have been complaining for the longest time that it's just a bunch of drug dealers in there. How these people get disabled, I don't know. And they and every place that I see in the city, and I'll even tell you who I am. I'm Wayne Bodas, and I'm sick and tired of it. Because if it went to the right people, I'd have no problem. But I'm sick and tired of seeing the right people left behind, and drug dealers and everybody else take control of all this and get it for free.
All right, let's go. Let me get a word in edgewise. Go ahead. You want to respond to that?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about subsidized housing a lot, and I think compared certainly to my predecessors, I've not promoted the addition of subsidized housing in the city. In fact, we've tried to reduce the footprint of public housing. So we cut a ribbon on a new public housing complex at West Lawn over on Liberty Street. And that was a site that had, I think it was 30 units, and the Patrick administration wanted to replace every one of them one by one. And I said, no, we're not. We need to reduce our footprint. And so they ultimately did. They replaced it with 12 handicap units instead of 30 regular units.
Well, 10% under the law, 10% is required to be.
Well, no, that's a separate.
Totally
statute,
separate thing.
Right?
Okay.
So
but we're way past.
But
that
he's referring to public housing. He's referring specifically to Trip Towers on Roof Street, and more particularly, he's referring to the fact that some of the elderly housing, that there have been disabled younger folks who have been introduced to elderly housing in the city, and that's there are some issues there that have to do with the housing authority's funding, and the housing authority acts independently of city government, so it's not like I have control over that. I take his point. We're not looking to expand public housing in the city, and during my time here, we've actually reduced it.
All right, 508-996-0500. You're up next with the mayor. Good afternoon. Hello, you're on the air.
Mr. Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
I called the water department last week because for a few weeks I've been getting a chemical taste and smell to my water at the end of the day. And the two men came down last Thursday. They just went down, saw a couple of minutes, and then the older man that came up with the younger man said everything was okay down Solo. Get bottled water. Well, that's not the answer that I was expecting. Something must be causing that chemical smell and taste to my water usually around 8 o'clock, like my last drink of water.
Huh.
And so I gave him, I already had taken the night before, I had a sample of the water I had in a little jar, and I gave it to him. I haven't heard anything since. What do I do now?
Let me follow up on it. I can either take your name and number here, or we can, you want you to call the mayor's office and just provide that information. I'll give you the number for that. Sylvia usually listens to the show, and she's probably listening to this right now.
I'll call your office?
Yeah, so it's 979-1410.
Okay, yeah, I got it. Yeah, okay.
Any of your neighbors have the same problem? Have you spoken?
Well, no, I don't go out much. I haven't spoken to any of them. No.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So we'll try to figure out what the issue is, and we'll do whatever we can.
All right, I'll call the office now.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. All right. Thanks for the call. 508-996-0500. Let me take a real quick break. We'll come back with some more. If you've got a question or a comment for the mayor, 508-996-0500. And we've got about 10 more minutes to go. Stay with us. All right, 12:52 is our time on a Wednesday afternoon, midweek with the mayor, crawling to a close almost. We're almost done, right? We're just,
we could say this is the home stretch.
The home stretch, right. It's Halloween, and we want you all to behave yourself out there tonight. Now, leave good tricks.
Kids, don't go to Barry's house. You're wasting your time.
Or if you like the mayor and he doesn't have a chance to get candy, he's going to hand out money tonight, right?
Cash. Cash at my house, yeah.
508-996-0500. You're up next on WBSM. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
I have a question for Mayor Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
Could you explain the procedure where the city determines what cable company that's available to the residents, and why we don't have choices in cable television?
Yeah. So I'll field the first question first because I think it'll answer it directly, and that is Comcast is the only one that cares to be in our market. There are certain other places, bigger cities in particular, that have more than one. Verizon has cable service and with their Fios line of products, and places like Boston and others. And we've tried to convince them to come here, and they just don't think they can make the money.
Well, it's not profitable unless they can have the whole city, right?
Right.
Yeah.
No. They won't even do that. They won't even do that. They for them to to install the infrastructure, the lines, and everything, and all that, it would be cost prohibitive for them. We just don't. We don't have the subscribing, the level of the volume of customer demand that would.
So Comcast pretty much has us.
Comcast is just a huge monopoly. It's nearly a monopoly. They act like a monopoly.
So if Comcast was to pull out,
being really candid about it, yeah.
If they were to pull out, we'd have no replacement to come in because it'd be too cost prohibitive for them.
Yeah, I don't know whether they've done that anywhere, and I don't know whether under the FCC rules they could do that. I don't have a good answer to that.
Yeah.
I could probably do it.
I was interested in changing cable companies, but when I contact Verizon, they say they don't have service in the area.
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, the Fios service you're talking about. They have.
Comcast has a contract with the city, or
well, they do, and it lasts. I think it lasts 10 years, and they've had it now for I don't know. Comcast and their predecessors have had it for a while now, but it's true here. It's true in a lot of places in the Northeast. And Comcast really does have the corner, at least in the northeastern United States.
I appreciate your call. 508-996.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a totally satisfactory answer, but I think that's the reality. And I'll do a little bit more homework so I can explain it in context a little bit better.
All right, you're next with the mayor on WBSM. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor.
Yep.
How you doing? I just wanted to call you and thank you and commend you for your support of Yes on Question 3. It means a lot to all us transgender people out in this area, and God bless you for what you do every day, sir. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate the call. 508-996-0500. You're up next on WBSM. Good afternoon.
Yes, I had called earlier, talked with you about Halloween. I know the mayor's on, and I got some statistics. 3,280 people died, kids-wise, on trick-or-treat last year across the United States.
Well, you called me earlier? I don't remember talking to you.
Oh, all right. Well, it was around 10.
Yeah, well, no, that wasn't me. No,
all right. I'm sorry. Yeah, but so anyway, so the statistics is 3,280 people. That's the number of children that have died during Halloween in the United States. So I, again, wish everyone to be safe.
All right, thank you.
I definitely want people to be safe.
Yeah, no question.
Don't drive slowly through neighborhoods tonight.
Yes. You're next on WBSM. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Barry.
Hi.
And Mr. Mayor.
Good afternoon.
To answer your caller on the TV, if he's got $14.95, go to Walmart or go to Brooks or CVS and get Clear TV. You disconnect your cable, you screw in the Clear TV, and you get all kinds of channels for nothing.
Clear TV should be paying you a commission for that.
Is that legal?
Pardon me?
Is it legal?
Oh, absolutely. They advertise. The only thing is, when they advertise Clear TV, it's on late night, early morning, so nobody sees it.
Yeah, but what kind of channels can you get? I mean, you can't get like.
I was getting the ABC, CBS, NBC. I was getting Grit. I was getting a station called.
That's already more channels than I want on mine, but yeah.
To give you another clue, my cousin lives out in Westport. He put an antenna on the roof. He gets 68 channels for nothing.
But you can't get the Red Sox, though. You can't get the Red Sox.
Oh, yes, I think you can.
Yeah?
You can get Fox.
Yeah, I mean, they're the Dish networks. I mean, that's a...
Yeah, on the Dish networks, but I mean, not with Clear TV from Walmart for $4.99.
Oh, really?
Yeah, let me hold you right there.
I couldn't tell you.
508-996-0500. You're up next in WBSM. Good afternoon.
Yeah, one question, if I can get it across. I just have had an awful time trying to understand this question that's going to be on the ballot. I don't know if this is a city question, but if one of you could answer. And I've listened to all talk shows, and they just confuse me. It's question 1, the nurses staffing.
Yeah.
And I guess that would apply to South Coast and, the hospitals around here. Which side is you?
Am I on?
No, I don't care what side you're on. I'm just wondering how
okay.
Answer that.
So how do you like that?
With this union, if you vote yes on that, my tentative understanding is if I vote yes on that, that's really the union position. Is that correct? Whereas management's position is no. Is that right? Or
I think that's loosely speaking.
All right, hold on. Let the mayor answer. Go ahead.
Loosely speaking, I think that's the case. Although there are a number of unions that are against that ballot question, but basically it mandates a certain nurse staffing level.
Right.
And
I know a lot of nurses that are opposed to it.
Yeah. I think it's more and more. There are more and more people who are coming out against it. I think the most recent poll I saw was that it was only getting about 31% support, and that is because I think people understand it's going to really cost hospitals a lot of money that they don't have right now. And think of South Coast Health Systems that lost $30 million a year ago, which is concerning to me. It should be for everybody. And the fact that, if you don't have a certain nurse staffing level, if you're not in compliance, you have to send patients away. And that's not something that we want to see happen.
All right. Appreciate it.
That's my reasoning.
Thank you very much for your call. Appreciate it. And we can talk more about the ballot questions as we go on this afternoon. A lot of other things that we're going to talk about as well. But that's going to do it.
Just like that. Boy, where did that hour go, Barry?
It just flies right by. Just flitters right by. So once again, everybody be safe tonight.
Happy Halloween.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Halloween. By the way, people can't, I don't know if you can see, that's me in the Bumblebee.
In the Bumblebee suit, yeah.
Suit was,
can you
Loretta.
text that later on and send it over, and we'll get it up on the website?
Yeah.
How's that?
Yeah, we'll send it over.
Appreciate it. See you later on, guys.
See you.